Well, hello everyone. It's Dr. Drake 63 here again today. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about a subject which amongst the AK community has become a little bit of a fire starter, a little bit of a 1911 versus Glock, Ford versus Chevy. I think you get the drift here. And that is, who makes a better rifle, WASR or N-pap? I can tell you that we're going to dive into this and look at differences. I do not declare a winner, although for those that are keeping score, the results from lifelong Serbia versus Romania has Serbia with a 2-0 lead in worldwide football competition. So there is that. Other than that, I can't get too definitive other than to show you what the differences are, and I want you to decide based on that, because neither of these rifles are for everyone. If you're looking to buy a new AK in today's world, and this would be September 2017, your options are somewhat limited. From an import standpoint, there are 3 countries that are making barreled receivers that are coming over here that we put 922 parts on, and those are our imports. Those would be the Npap, which comes from the ZASTAVA company that's located in Serbia. It used to be part of Yugoslavia and so forth and so on. A lot of that rifle's battle history goes back to that war in Croatia and so forth and so on. Choice number 2 would be the WASR, which is made in Romania by the CUGIR factory. And it's a very, very popular and widely available rifle. There's some myths associated with it. There's no such thing as a WASR over the years. It's changed in quality. It's changed in look and feel. The kind of quality that's used in today's version is probably the best that it's ever been. Arsenal is still available. However, it's not available. They've announced that they are going to discontinue their export production to meet some military contracts, which means that the supply of SLR 104s and SLR 107s and things like that that we'd like to have are very limited. In other words, yeah, you can get them. I'm sure there's people hanging on to these things, but they're not easy to get. So if you want an import right now and you want to guarantee that you can go out and find somebody that stocks an AK, your 2 choices are going to be an N-pap of some type or a WASR, Romania versus Serbia. Okay. Your other options would be U.S. built AKs. I'm not getting into those. I don't own any of them. And in addition to that, you've got what I call the custom shops. Probably the very best AKs in the world are built in some of these custom shops, but that's what they are, is custom shops. There's no way that Rifle Dynamics and or JMac Customs could take on the demand for these rifles that are out there. So they meet a high-end market. It's for guys that know exactly what they're looking for, or have the money to get the very best. Do these rifles function better than a WASR, better than an N-pap, better than an Arsenal? I'd have to throw that one out there. Let somebody else make that determination. I can tell you this, I don't know. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. Let's start off by taking a look at a Romanian CUGIR SAR-1. These were the Romanian imports that were made right before WASR started. They stopped making them in 2003. This is a 2003 model. Had a non-threaded barrel, but did come with a double stack receiver. So a little bit different from the WASR, but basically a very good representation of what you'd get today. Here is the ZASTAVA Npap DF. It's an underfolder. This model is brand new almost, 2017 model. I believe I've got 750 rounds through it. So yes, it's not a fixed stock direct comparison with the Romanian gun, but gives you a very good representation of what you can buy. These are basically due to default. The last two standing, a factory receiver, a factory barrel brought over. One of them's got chrome lining, the other one does not. Now let's take a look at the tail of the tape. You can see that the UGO, as it's sometimes referred from ZASTAVA, 34.5 inches from the tip of the muzzle nut back to the end of the barrel, and it's also with the SAR Romanian 34.5 inches. So both of these firearms are identical in that particular dimension. When we start looking at the handguard, you'll start noticing some pretty big differences here. You've got about 5.5 inches versus 4.5 inches on top, 4.25. So over an inch difference longer for the UGO. Not so much on the bottom. You see 6.5 inches for the bottom of the front handguard. Here you see about 6. So about a 1/2 inch shy and about 1.25 inches on the dimensions. Looking at the gas tube length, 7 inches versus about 6.25, 6.5. So nothing interchangeable here. Just for purposes of comparison too, you can see that if you collapse the stock on the N-pap, you can knock off a good 10 inches of length. So you can see why that development was made by the Soviets. Some more detailed close-up if you look at the front sight block of each with the N-pap on top, you can just see how much larger. Coming back and looking at the gas blocks, again, same thing. More material used on the N-pap on top than you see with the standard size. Again, was it because of launching grenades, or did they think that they were improving the rifle with this? Not really sure. So, yeah, they're both AK copies, but one's really not. Taking a further look, we're going to check out the detail on a couple things, looking at the rivets on the trigger guard. Here you see the N-pap. You can compare that to the same kind of close-up detail of a WASR type variant. Looking down the barrels, you can see on the left your N-pap, and on your right is your CUGIR, a WASR kind of, sort of gun, as we keep saying. Anyway, looking at one on the right is chrome line, the one on the left is not. They are both cold hammer forged, which is a preferred way to make semi-automatic and full automatic military firearms. It has to do with how their characteristics handle with heat. Again, we've got different types of buttstocks represented here. You can change out a lot of things. They don't make underfolders from the WASRs anymore. They used to. Wish they would again. And as you can see on the left, you have a double stap magazine. The N-pap, like the WASR, is opened up at the factory, in this case Century, when they're imported. Just about finished looking at details. I wanted to show you the differences in rear trunnions and just how much bigger and thicker the N-paps is on the right. Again, this is to accommodate an underfolder type mechanism, and it's also bigger because of their love for the grenade launching, as mentioned. You can see on the right with the UGO that they've hand stenciled the serial number. It matches a similar hand stenciled number on the bolt carrier. This is what a chrome lined chamber looks like. This is what a non-chrome lined chamber looks like. Probably doesn't make a lick of difference for the way that 99.9% of us are going to shoot it. As always, we like to look at these bolt tails. Similar round counts on these, both under 1,000 but more than 700. You can see on the right here is your CUGIR. On the left is your N-pap. They both look fine. They're not getting peened, so forth and so on. Again, on your right is your N-pap. You can kind of tell by the nickel plated. In this picture, it's on the left. We're not looking at peening or problems that are of any concern for me. And if you look here also at the slots or grooves on the side, this is where they ride on the rails, and this is not an exact duplicate. They're cut differently. So another reason you don't have interchangeability. On top here you have a dust cover for the N-pap measuring less than 9 inches. And on the bottom you've got a dust cover for the SAR-1 CUGIR, and it's measuring over 9, so almost half an inch longer. So lots of dimensional differences on these firearms, and that's the main reason why one of them is interchangeable with just about everything, and you've got another one that really isn't. One of the first things I always do when I pick up a semi-automatic rifle is work the bolt. Here you see me holding the SAR. I've got the dust cover off. It's relatively smooth. Here you got a little bit of wiggle up here with your gas tube. That can be fixed, and a little bit of mag wob. Not a big deal. I view this as kind of a standard AKM copy. Now we've got same exact firearm, except this time we've got the dust cover on, but I'm one of those guys that just can't get enough of that. Here comes the N-pap now. Taking a look at it. I actually put a Wolf power spring in here, because these things tend to be just a tad over-gassed, and I like the way it works with that. For those of you who don't know what a Wolf power spring is, it's the exact same kind of spring that comes in your firearm. It's about 2 or 3 inches longer. How's that for high-tech? Again, me with my favorite sound. I just can't seem to get enough of that. Someday I think I'm going to make a video which is nothing except me cycling bolts. Again, nice and handy. Knock about 10 inches or so off of your overall length. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot about these battles between WASR guys and Npap guys and everything else is it's like one of them just is so much better than the other or whatever, and, you know, I really have problems with that. Here's what I do know, and I think this is causing problems probably for N-pap sales, and it's probably why, you know, at least the fixed stock version, now we're seeing it for like $500 or something. So it's as low as it's been in probably 4 or 5 years. As we know, there's been some negative publicity that I think was earned by ZASTAVA with soft metal in their receivers. I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this. I've done a bunch of time myself doing research on things like Rockwell hardness tests and things of that nature. And it seems like they kind of do. And I think the really question comes down to is it batch related, or does it have something to do with the type of receiver that you're getting? In other words, something that's built just to be a civilian receiver and exported, and it's probably not going to be as good as something that is built for military and just needs a little bit more stamping, and it's the same receiver. Now, we think that's what's going on with CUGIR and the WASRs, but actually it's not. It comes over to this country as a single stack receiver, and then Century Arms opens the thing up. They used to do a really bad job of it, and I think they do a much better job of it now. So in both cases, that might be the case. And there's certain N-paps, I think this is true of the DF. If you look at it, it's got the extra stamping for that third pinhole, and a lot of other things, such as the reinforcement around the axis holes on these, tell me that this is not some thrown together receiver that came to the U.S. civilian market, like a lot of them that have. Something that I've seen a lot of, and it just kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit, And that's this concept of guys that are going to say, yeah, I put 12,000 rounds through my WASR last year, and it performs as good as an arsenal. Why would I want to spend twice as much on a rifle if it's just as good or even better? You could do the math on that real quick, and we'll keep the number 10 going. Assuming you can get 7.62 for somewhere around 20 cents a round, that means you're saying you spent $2,000 on ammo and $500 on your rifle, or $600 on your rifle. Believable? I see a lot of it that probably isn't, but how can you disprove somebody and that kind of thing? But, we're seeing a lot of it right now. The mighty WASR. And certainly the mighty WASR's stakes have gone very high because you can no longer get Russian rifles. Tantals are gone from Poland. We pretty much are just part kits unless you're talking about a WASR, unless you're talking about a rare in-stock arsenal, or if you're talking about an N-pap. So I think you draw these comparisons and I can't say. I can tell you this. Everybody's different. And I think if you're a typical AR-oriented type of individual and you pick up your first AK and it's a WASR, and then you pick up an N-pap, which feels, and I'm not talking metallurgy now, I'm just talking about in terms of tolerances and things, N-pap feels like a much more sturdy rifle than the WASR. And just the way we think, especially in America, is great. It's got tight tolerances. It's ready to go. And that can be a little bit misleading. I will say this. The days of WASRs just having the worst furniture ever and extreme cants all over the place seem to be gone. I don't know, but I'm going to guess that quality control has been increased at Century. The thing that I get a little bit confused about, guys, Century brings in the N-paps. Century brings in the WASR. Century brings in parts kits, I believe, for their ACAM 73s or 63s, whatever those are, and they make their own AKs. I'm wondering which is the most profitable proposition for them. But it may not be the American-made AK just because of our labor costs, but I'd really love to know that. And I doubt if I'm going to get to know that unless I, get hired onto the board there or something. But my point is this. You got one company bringing in the vast majority of what we can see right now. Think about it. Anyway, without getting off on that, I do not want to be the guy to tell you which one of these rifles you need. But I'm going to give you some help based on what you might like. So here goes. If you want to get the most accurate of the two rifles, get the N-pap. Why do I say that? It is not chrome lined. It has a slightly heavier barrel profile, and it leads to better accuracy, and in my experience, it has it. Not a ton, but a little. Here's another point. If you want to change out all of the furniture, change the handguards, and accessorize everything around a receiver, then you probably want to get the WASR. Why? Because it's standardized. As I showed you earlier, the N-pap is really its own animal. It's an AK-ish AKM, whereas the WASR is built on the same tooling equipment and designs that were given to the Romanians by the Russians. So, if you want to accessorize that sucker a lot, get the WASR. I'll just say that again. If you want to accessorize it a lot, get the WASR. Now, there are places such as Apex Gun Parts, I'll just throw that out there, that have a lot of N-pap parts. You're seeing more accessories for the N-pap. Zukov stock is an example. But for the most part, that's what you're looking at, okay? If you want to get an underfolder these days, you kind of got to get an N-pap. Why? Because even though WASR has made underfolders in the past, and I'd love to get one if they came out with one now, they currently do not sell underfolders. They sell the fixed stock items, as you see. So there you go. If you don't want to worry about, is it possibly bad metallurgy, and if you're the type of person that's going to get real concerned about the quality of your rifle and the ability to shoot it for a long time without any worries about the receiver, I wish I could answer that question for you. If my only AK was my N-pap underfolder, I'd be a lot more tuned into that than I am as somebody that, quite frankly, can afford to have that rifle fail on me because they have other AKs. Having said that, though, that is a big question mark that's going to loom in some people's mind. Okay, if you want a gun that you can fire a lot more rounds without having your hand catch on fire, suggest you go, again, with the N-pap. Why? Because as I showed you earlier, it's got that big, longer and stouter, if you will, handguard going on in the wood. Okay. Which one of these rifles is going to hold its value better? From what I've seen a lot lately, this last year or so, which you would have never guessed 5 years ago, I would say a WASR would. I think there's a lot of N-paps out there. There's probably still a lot of N-paps that have that really messed up, non-reinforced axis hole receiver version out there. I don't know. But we'll see what happens going forward. What's tough about this is here's the position that we're in as American consumers when it comes to these imports. And actually, it's just not the imports. It's also going to be stuff made here in the U.S. We live in a country where a couple election cycles and a tragedy could find us in a position where it's no longer legal to purchase new semi-automatic weapons. And if you think that's not possible or that can't happen, just look at all the states where it already has happened. So why do I bring that up? Because if you are a manufacturer looking at investing in equipment, manufacturing lines, all the things you need to do to forge trunnions, all the things you need to do to bend steel, you name it. If you're thinking about doing that on a large scale, you're going to have to invest a lot of money. There's a really good chance by the time that you're ready to roll, you can't even sell your product, and nobody's going to recoup that investment for you. It's just not going to happen. So my suggestion is learn to live with what is when it comes to these AKs, and go whichever way you can. If you're going to own more than one AK, I suggest you get both of these rifles. I really do. I've got somebody here apparently that just wants to be on camera. I don't know what her problem is, but she's just being here listening to me talk, and she just can't handle it. Just so everyone knows, I don't work for either of these companies. If I did, I guess in the U.S. that'd mean I worked for Century Arms, and I'm very sure that I don't work for Century Arms. But are they hiring? I mean, possibly. But I do love these 7.62 AKs that are out there. They call these entry level. As much as they're costing anymore, entry to what? I mean, the difference between entry level and middle of the road's a couple $100. It kind of makes you wonder anymore. So be real interested in seeing where this whole thing goes, where this market goes. But I think in terms of the whole WASR versus N-pap thing, it's probably going to be an ongoing discussion for quite a while, especially now that they're kind of the only two left that you can easily get. And they're about the same price point. So I think this is how it's going to go, just like Remington versus Mossberg on shotguns. So anyway, we appreciate your time today. This is Dr. Drake 63 signing off. Thanks for watching. And if you can support me, $1 a month or whatever, please visit my Patreon. I'd very much love to have your support and keep these things going. Thank you.